And welcome back to the Intoxicational podcast, DnD session. This is Veckin.
Papa Smurf.
And that's right, he changed his name. Today we're talking about character creation.
Go ahead.
Just for the FYI, Papa Smurf is the artist formerly known as Naj. He went back to his original name, apparently.
I blame myself. Veckin.
Oh, shut up. Anyways, so, what is the most important thing in character creation?
Flow of your DM.
Flirt with your DM?
I said flow.
I agree.
I said flow.
Okay. What do you mean by said thing?
Well, I find that a lot of people have these really good ideas for characters, but, ... they have absolutely no place in the campaign that they're trying to play in. A great example is I tried very vigilantly to play a passive or a pacifistic cleric. It was a brilliant character and had great stats.
And would have been perfect in a different campaign, but in this very combat-oriented campaign, I got my ass handed to me and was completely useless for the majority of the campaign. Quite. Until the clever DM so valiantly gave his character an alignment shift and changed his perceptions on the view of combat.
Yes, it was great. But I personally believe it is very important to make sure your character is going to jive with the party that you're in, because there's nothing worse than a lawful good paladin in the midst of a bunch of evil characters. Well, it just doesn't work.
It can be very, very fun if played properly, but yeah.
Anyway, it just jiving is very important in character creation.
Indeed.
Another good example is recently I was giving an example. Anyway, recently I have a character in my most recent campaign, and I'm teaching a bunch of new players how to play. And the guy who is playing this character is the most experienced player there. And his character is the living pain in my ass because he's a lawful evil antagonist who is antisocial and a bit of a know-it-all and likes being alone. And it's making it very, very difficult for my new characters, or my new players, to learn how to play. So, I basically asked the player to knock his shit off and gave him a good excuse for his change of action and personality. But it got to the point that if said player was not willing to go along, it would have been easier for me to kill the character than it would have been to continue with this mutiny of sorts as a personality trait from a DM.
Yes.
It kind of trailed off into nothing.
Yeah.
That was a little bit of a rant. Sorry, guys.
It's fine. He's taking out his rant on me on the podcast. Because I'm sitting here going, it's one of two players. Oh, nope, it's me. Because I like to play evil characters, and this particular character is very, very anti-magic. He doesn't like magic, he doesn't do magic, he doesn't partake in magic, unless, of course, the act of magic is being used to destroy magic. He's very much in to justify the means. And, I mean, in his defense, the party member that is the most outspoken and kind of in your face hasn't been the nicest of person to him.
That is also true.
So yes, he is an asshole. Yes, he hasn't been working with the party, but under the circumstances, it's almost forgivable, and now he is actually kind of working with the party a little bit better, a little bit more personable. Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, driving is very, very important.
Yes.
not only with your characters but with your DM, because you could have this great character idea, and it could go absolutely nowhere because, well, it doesn't work in this campaign whatsoever.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
Going along with this, my take on what the most important part of character creation is actually backstory and figuring out how your character is going to play. It's kind of including Papa Smurf's point, and kind of not. Um, I think that there's something to be said for having the first session be 4 hours longer and having those first 4 hours be character creation with everyone there and you guys going over backstories together, assuming you're in a party that's starting relatively together and not being all strangers, which I hate having to start people as strangers because it usually is a pain in the dick, much like prostate cancer. Well, yeah, I like having backstories that are good because then you can award bonuses to the people if they have good backstories. If they have good backstories that also include flaws, they can draw from that to play their character. There's also NPCs that you can create that could be wandering the world based on their backstories, and just you can enrich your world. Even if you have a very good world set out, you can enrich it even further with their own backstories and work that into your world and draw from it if they ever go to a town, even if it's in another campaign. Because I know for me, I have one big world that I've built over many sessions, and the timeline is as laid out as I have it in my head and on paper, so that if somebody does something in the past, I can have that inkling trail down to the future. I know a recurring theme in my campaigns tends to be a rusty wooden spork, which was found/spawned in during the first campaign ever run in the timeline. There's legends of a bard in my world who's very, very annoying, and talks like this. Yes. His name is Bo. His descendants wander the land, causing many people pain, strife, and suffering as they go, but telling stories about completely fictional events that he thought were real, because he tried to take credit for everything that party did. Always. And terrible character flaw. His pathological liar, bipolar, manic depressant character, absolutely horrible character flaws, made his character extremely hard to play and extremely hard to deal with, but the stories that came out of it and the memories that were caused in the game, fantastic.
Yeah, I have never been in a campaign where Bo the Bar has not come up in Beckett's world. He is very much a big reoccurring thing. He also has many characters that were once characters, or characters played by players that are in his world reoccurringly, and it makes for fantastic storyline and just really enjoyable even for the players later on, because you're like, hey, I played that character, or hey, I know this character, and it's just very enriching and makes the world seem more alive.
Yes, that is a very good thing to add. DM hint of the day. Yes.
Also, with character creation and going along backstory, is it really answers a lot of questions for you. Like, I know, also in this most recent campaign, most of the new characters most new players, my bad, did not write backstories. So they would ask questions like, how long have I been in the city? And I would answer, I don't know. You tell me. How long has your character been in the city? Did you grow up here? Did you travel here? Where did you grow up? And they would be like, I don't know. Shouldn't you tell me? I'm like, no, it's your character. You should write its backstory.
Yes.
And it's been really an educational process for them, realizing how truly important the backstory is.
Quite. And harkening back, jive with your
Go ahead.
DM when making your backstory. Don't go, I was a hero of Sorrowville, I slayed 13 dragons, conquered many men, and have laid with many women. My sword is magical in origin and gleams with the color of an enlightened sun. My teeth sparkle with the glimmer of emeralds. I don't know why, but they do. And the DM's just going, no, you're level 1. The most you've done is kill 13 rats in a basement.
Who could have been named Dragon, for all you know.
True enough.
I've even been in some campaigns where I'm like level 0, so I don't even have a class yet.
Yes. The miniature campaign, level 0. It's coming.
Level 0.
It's coming. It's coming.
That is one of Beckon's favorite things to do.
I love starting characters level 0 because it makes them realize how much powerful they get, and it makes great progression and great storyline. And also, I like hard campaigns and I like messing with players. Both of which are accomplished at level 0.
I personally like overpowered characters and good storyline where you get a lot of that. Oh, I see how he linked that around, or like a lot of mystery in the campaigns where you really feel the separation of your characters from the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite sayings as a DM is, there are a lot of things going on in this world. Not all of them are happening to you.
It's very true. It's very true.
That is completely off topic, but that is a really good thing to keep in mind as a player, is that your DM, if he's a good DM, is going to have several, like, other things going on in his world at this exact moment of time. Especially if he runs the way that me and Dutton do, where all these things are happening in one world, usually based off of one, like, section of land and or continent. And it's very challenging to think of all these things as a DM, and to prod at them is not very polite. But your DM will also be very enlightened, excited probably to let you know of all the clever things he's thought up to include in his world of magic and dragons,
oh, yes.
dungeons and so forth.
Love informing players of what's going on. As a like a primer, kind of a primer into the next campaign that I plan on running, the actual next campaign I plan on running. The world setting is that 8 years ago, from when the campaign starts, the entire population of the world doubled, and no one knows quite why.
Oh my! What makes for interesting gameplay, especially in Beckon's world, is that three of us, including myself, have immortal characters. So it's very interesting to see where they end up further along the timeline and what actually equals their demise. Because they're not, like, completely immortal. They can die eventually, somehow, in a very unique way. But they're pretty much immune to death. And it's just very interesting to see where they end up further along as Dutton's world unfolds.
Love putting people in places and things. Let's see. Next on the importance of character creation, I would rank skills.
I don't think I would rank skills next. I think I would say feats.
No, I'm gonna go with skills because usually, out of combat, skills are what define your character. What are their skill set? How do they act? Why do they act in certain ways? Could be determined by skills. I mean, sometimes I like rolling or completely organic characters, which means I roll my stats in order only one time. I then determine, or the only thing I've determined prior to is race, and sometimes even that I like to roll for a dice, just to be random and difficult. And then I'll choose what class they would be, and from what class I would be, as determined like what backstory they'd have, and then based on their backstory, I'll determine their alignment. And yeah, and then skills would help define, or the backstory would then help define their skills, and their skills help define how they're going to play in the future. So, but yes, feats in combat. I'd almost rank them equally. Skills out of combat and feats in combat.
I can agree with that. That's something else very important. Coming back down to rule number 1, make sure your character jives well. If you're gonna have like a bunch of rogues that all know how to open locks, you guys are not gonna jive well. You guys are gonna be tripping over each other, and you're not gonna have nearly as much fun. I recently played a Pathfinder campaign. Actually, my first one. I'm not sure which I like more yet. I'm still sticking with DnD. That's what I know about. But anyway, back on topic. I am playing a bard, and the witch character has, or no, not the witch, the summoner character has almost identical spell list as I do. And saying we both pick spells known like sorcerers, we have the same exact spell list, and it makes it completely pointless for either of us to cast spells because we picked the same exact spell list. So when we got around to a level where we could change out spells, and we actually begged our DM to let us change out spells, we definitely wanted to, because we were both completely pointless. Like, one of us would end up casting what the other one was planning to, and it just made us hate playing with each other because we played the same character. And that comes down to your skills as well, making sure that you communicate well, especially as a new player, what your other party members are doing, so you're not tripping over each other in a sense.
Yeah, if you're playing a game where you've got a fighter, a bard, and a wizard, and the bard is the diplomat who poured all of his points into diplomacy, bluff, and intimidate, it's not going to do you very good if the fighter suddenly comes along and decides he wants to be a diplomatic fighter, where he'd probably have a better time being not so good at talking, but being better at climbing or jumping or other things. I forget what would it, yeah, just example A plus example B equals better party than example A plus example A. It makes it a more well-rounded party.
Going back to feats, I personally think feats is what makes a character. You can have really good stats, you can have really magical stuff, but your feats are what's going to make your character. What's really going to A, define how you do combat, and B, how well you do it. That being said, it also requires the most book work, because there is a lot of feats.
Yeah, and it only gets worse the more books your DM includes.
Yes.
If you're limited to just the player's handbook, it's not so bad.
No. As a fighter, you will run out in like 2
levels. Well, more like 10. Unless you start well, see, I think the fighter is a unique case of we're playing to be overpowered, and when other people play fighters by level 10, they've got their one weapon and they're really good with it. They then pick up another weapon and become just as good with that one. Because fighters usually only take feats that, or at least in our experience, usually only take feats that benefit the weapon that they're using, so that they're the best at it. Or the best at their specific type of combat. And there are many many different ways of doing combat in D&D.
Not only will it help you, like picking feats, doing lots of feat book work will help you be a better player, for one. It'll also help you be a better DM if you were to ever become one. Because dealing with new players, the question I get asked more and more as the more I play is, what feat should I pick? And it's very handy as a DM to be like, what are you playing? You should pick this feat. For instance, weapon finesse is huge for rogues. Good first or third level feat. No big deal. Easy to pick. Run is another good feat for rogues, so they can get away. I'm trying to think of a couple more. Archers. Point blank shot, and then precise shot. Perfect feats. And that allows you to kind of continue on without putting much thought into what your new player is trying to get at.
Indeed.
Because you can go on for hours about feats and how they react, and your new player will totally get bored and start thinking about when they're going to eat dinner next, if there's still any pizza left in the pizza box. It's much simpler for them and for you to just be like, you want point blank shot. See, next level.
And then usually you can let them explore the books and choose and try to think of feats they'd want in the future in between sessions, where you can sit down and help them, take your time, do a Skype call with them or something.
Yeah, and it A, keeps your campaign moving along, and B, makes you seem like a more knowledgeable DM. And like you really take a personal interest in their character.
Indeed.
At least that's how I feel like my players feel.
Also,
like,
as a DM, it's good to have more knowledge than most people. Just saying.
Yeah.
And finally, probably the least important thing about making your character, in my opinion, is your stats.
Well, true.
Maybe not least. Probably least important would be your name, unless you're like me and go balls to the wall with names. But
we haven't talked about alignment at all.
We're getting to it.
Okay.
Chill. Stats are stats. They will come, they will go, they will be random, usually, or they will be decided upon. It's probably best that you just build your character with your stats in mind, and make the best character you can with them, but don't let them rule your day. Don't be like, oh, I have a 6 in intelligence, I'm never going to be able to play a good character. No, you're just going to play a character with a character flaw. Next topic. Character flaws. So, I can do segues. It's neat. Character flaws are fantastic and wonderful, and I think everyone should have 3. Minimum.
3?
Well, yeah, no one's perfect.
I mean, you're right, but...
I mean, if you think about it, in real life, people don't have these perfect... You're not perfect. You have many, many flaws. And I'm not saying that your character flaw has to be like you're a compulsive liar and you're a cheat and a thief. Your character flaw could be something as easy as your character doesn't understand the concept of convenience.
What does that mean?
Your character will always accidentally seek out the harder way to do things. Like, instead of going to the store and getting a glass of milk, or a bottle of milk, he will attempt to find a cow and milk it himself.
Or it could be a racial bias. Maybe you particularly don't like elves.
Exactly. Or maybe your character had a bad run-in with a guy who used a curved sword. And so anytime you see a curved sword, he gets irrationally angry at the person.
I played a character who was constantly in an emotional battle with herself because she had become a vampire, and though morally she wanted to do the good thing in her life, she was twisted and desired evil due to her genuine nature of living, just because she was a vampire. And then she had this great distress because her entire family was killed in her backstory, and her village was burnt down by a particular individual that was the main antagonist of this campaign. So whenever she would see these things that reminded her of her village, she would go into a blind rage, and being a vampire, that ended in a lot of destruction and death.
Nom 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 nom
nom nom nom nom nom.
Yes.
But it made for a great character experience and great story, because at the time she was also one of the more powerful beings in the campaign, and would just tear holes in villages and break through walls and try her best to do good, but at the same time have a sickening need for blood and flesh.
Yes, and that's actually, he was playing a character in a campaign that I've ran twice now. Actually, 3 times. It was a campaign that was set in a very specific timeline, and the ending had already been chosen, so that my people knew that history couldn't be rewritten, because the ending was set in stone, but no campaign had ever actually finished. So I had originally run one campaign that lasted up until the party split in the desert. The other campaign was running counter to the first campaign, and had run roughly to the same point in the timeline. And the reason the first party split was because one of our characters was a fighter, and he was very honor-bound. He was a honorable individual who had a lot of care placed on how he fought and the rituals he held when he fought with people. Well, the cleric, which had the same backstory as Papa Smurf's cleric, took one of the enemy grunts captive, forced him onto his knees, and used Hold Person, the cleric spell, so he can't move, he's paralyzed. When he was done answering him questions and had not received the questions he wanted, he took his bow out, stabbed one of his eyes out onto the tip of his bow, and then killed the guy with his own eye, essentially, in a coup de grace attempt, which succeeded. At this point, the party fragmented, because the honor-bound fighter looked at the cleric, aghast and utterly confused at what had just happened in front of him. The party had an intense argument. The cleric continued on his self-righteous way down the tunnel. The fighter said, "All right, I'm out," turned and walked off into the desert. And that's where that campaign fragmented out and sputtered out into a abyss that never did recover. But that was a really awesome roleplay and a fantastically powerful moment, because the players were having great times with this, but they were role-playing their characters perfectly, so it felt like they were actually mad at each other. It was brilliant. Dare I say,
right.
It changed the world. No, it didn't.
It didn't change the world.
Yeah, no. I was trying to be Bill Nye. It didn't work. But it was a lot of fun. It had a good characters, and that was an example of character flaws. His backstory was whenever he was in these people, he would go blink. He would be a killing machine, doing one thing and one thing only, trying to get or kill the entire cult and get to its leader. And the fighter was like, I understand your need for revenge, but do it in a way that is honorable, and you didn't, you bastard. How dare you? But yeah, no, like my Scion has a character flaw where he doesn't like magic and is kind of an asshole to people who use it.
Kind of.
Well.
It was an understatement.
The character flaw my monk that I'm currently playing has is that he doesn't need money. He has no use for it other than to aid other people. So he goes around and helps out orphans and homeless people by donating money to them or setting them on the right path to getting a house or buying them new clothes, setting them up with a job, that sort of thing. He constantly looks for a work that he can do during the day.
You know what we call that? A hero complex.
Anyways,
did you hear me?
Yes, I heard you. Thank you very much. It's not a hero complex, though. He's just trying to do the most good he can.
Yes, say it, but do you mean it?
I would consider him very selfless.
Keep going. Keep going.
He doesn't use gold for his own purpose, so he can't rent a room. He can't buy dinner by his own moral code. So he looks for people that are in need of help or assistance and offers his assistance free if he can get a meal and a bed. And that's all he does in town. It's interesting. I don't think the DM I'm playing with quite likes it, but yeah. Because we're playing in a very combat-heavy group, in a very combat-heavy campaign, and I'm trying to do something very roleplay associated. And I don't play lawful good very well, because I'm not a very nice person, apparently. Or I just can't put myself in the mindset of being a utterly selfless person. I'm working on it. Maybe one day I'll be able to play a paladin that doesn't stab people in the arms for stealing gold. Maybe one day. Maybe one day. Hopes and dreams.
Let's see, what's next? Alignment?
Sure. Which I would go off of backstory.
Yes. I agree to a point. As a DM, I will change your alignment at any given time. due to how your character is reacting to the world.
Yes, that is
For instance,
perfect.
I almost sometimes think to myself that it would be easier to say everyone is true neutral, and then by level, I don't know, 2 or 3, change their alignment for them based off of how they're reacting to the world.
The problem
In my
with that
current
being
camp,
is clerics and things that worship deities for power.
yes, you tend to irritate some people at that point.
Yes.
But it comes down to usually if you experienced players will pick their own alignment because they know what they are, and they're very good at sticking to them. And at that point, it is the DM's responsibility, if they are not sticking to their alignment, to take care of that issue with their clerical beings. Because they're playing their deities, and the deities wouldn't put up with an alignment shift, so why should you?
Mm-hmm.
As a DM.
Yes, and as a DM, if your character is being an asshole to people and is supposed to be chaotic good and doing the best good possible in just a random way, he should probably send a demigod or an angel or something down to go, hey, knock it off. Get on the path, this is your one warning. Unless your god doesn't take action in the world, in which case just cut off his power. And don't tell the cleric this. Just at one point go, during combat, I attempt to heal my party. Okay, your spell fails. Why? Because your god is mad at you, and you have no connection to him anymore. Or her. And watches your player just dies in agony. And the entire party wipes. And it's because your cleric was an asshole. I wouldn't wipe I probably wouldn't wipe a party just because the cleric decided he was going to be a whore one night and go out drinking and sodomizing everything he could see. But I would definitely kick the shit out of the party for it.
Make them remember.
Make them remember so that they can make sure the cleric remembers. And peer pressure can be a hell of a drug. Peer pressure can be a hell of a drug. But
anyway, back to alignments. There's always been a lot of, especially in campaigns I've been in, a lot of controversy to which alignment really means which. In my campaigns, I look at neutral as a lot of people think of neutral as I'm just as likely to do good as I am to do bad. Now, I don't believe that. I believe neutral is I will do things that won't hurt people. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I don't know. Okay. So, good is I look for the betterment of mankind. Evil is I look for the demise of mankind and or selfish purposes. So good is selfless, bad or evil is selfish. And neutral would be I can be selfish, but I can be selfless at the same time, but never to a point of hurting people or really doing a lot of good for people. Just kind of riding the middle. Which is why I personally believe neutral is one of the harder alignments to play.
Yes.
Because you really ride a thin line between doing good and doing evil.
Well,
a lot of people try to play chaotic neutral as kind of like a cop-out, that I can chaotically switch between good and evil. And I will never allow that, especially if they're like, I'm going to murder this person because I want my gold back. I'm going to murder the shopkeep because I want my gold back. That is an evil action.
Very.
And that is very evil. Yeah, chaotically evil. So I will produce an alignment shift at that point.
Especially if they continue said action.
Yeah.
So, neutral to me, neutral is the most convoluted of the alignments because of people's perceptions on it. They think chaotic neutral especially means they're Skyrim.
Yeah.
That they can go in, they can walk in, and they can do anything and nothing affects them because they're chaotic neutral. That means they can do whatever they want. To me, chaotic neutral means that a character won't adhere to laws because he doesn't care for them, but he won't do something that intentionally harms an individual to the point of death or causes the world to become a worse place to live. Because at the end of the day, a neutral character, because they're selfish, most likely selfish, especially chaotic neutral, will want the world to be a better place because that means that they get more good things happening to them. If the world is a worse place, more bad things happen to them, so it's not in their interest to keep doing the bad things that cause the bad world. Huh? Yeah. So that's my take.
Agreed.
That is my take on neutral.
Yes.
Lawful means that you follow either a code, a set of laws, a set of ideals, or like a set of strict morals. Chaotic is very just spontaneous, as the word implies. Good, I think that good can shift between being selfless to being for the greater good, but not necessarily selfless. Because a character could do a series of evil actions, but if the series of evil actions leads to a better world, are they an evil person, or are they a good person who has a flawed methodology, or just not necessarily the best outlook on things? Maybe. It's up to the DM at this point.
Yeah. A lot of your alignments will actually come with DMs. Like, they will tell you what they expect. And a lot of, like, the differences, because some DMs will just say alignment really doesn't matter. I believe it does, because it really molds a character. And if you're not playing your character, then I'm going to have an issue with you as a DM. We're going to have problems. Especially if you start like switching your character around to better fit like how the game is reacting, because I'm going to create puzzles and challenges that are going to cause your character strife. Like it's just going to happen, as I think it should in any real life situation. But if you become very wishy-washy, then we're going to have a problem, because most people aren't very wishy-washy when it comes to their beliefs and morals.
Yeah, most people have a steadfast view on their life and how they view things. Some people are open to interpretation, some people are open to criticism, and some people form their beliefs and their morals to fit what they see, and others fit to see what they know is true. And that can differ. All of 5 of those can differ extremely much based on the person and how they have been raised or what scenario they've been placed in. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll change on a 5-second flit. It will be a month by month to maybe year by year basis before they actually change as a person.
Yeah.
I know for me, it took fucking 6 years almost to get where I am now, from a very not me perspective. I went from a very ignorant, close-minded individual to I hope, intellectual and open-minded individual who's willing to see more sides than just the one of a D20.
One of a D20.
Yes.
So, you would never get into locks.
Well, not necessarily. If my lockpick skill is high enough, a 1 isn't failure. Yes. And then there's role-playing, which, when you create a character and you've got your backstory, I can write a backstory for a character, but it doesn't mean I know how to play that character. Playing the character is how the character is going to act forward. I can describe to you the history of Adolf Hitler up until the point where he was recruited in World War I. But from World War I on, just because I know his backstory doesn't mean I know how he's going to act from here on out. Could be the same of somebody who suffered a severe childhood trauma if that trauma never comes up again, they could repress it and live out their life fine. But if the trauma comes up, it changes them radically because suddenly they're freaked out, or they have a problem with it, or they become a sociopathic murderer, or any number of things that could happen based on their backstory. But you don't necessarily have how the character is going to play from their backstory. And that could determine, or that could be that. Sorry, where was I going? Lost my train of thought. It took off and rolled down the tracks. Just because you don't have the player's backstory, just because you have the player's backstory, does not mean that you know where they're going to go with it. If I was to look at the backstory for my Scion and play him without knowing how I wanted to play him, he would probably still be going after magic, but he probably would be lawful neutral about it. He probably wouldn't be destroying. He probably wouldn't be seeking out to kill the people who practice magic. Probably trying to destroy their works would be more in line with his backstory. But that's not how my character is played. That's not how I wanted to play him. I wanted to play him as a very slow and methodical person who seeks out and destroys all sources of magic. And that's just how I wanted him to play, and I made a backstory that would lead him to this path, but not necessarily be the only path that his backstory could lead to.
I think what he's saying in layman terms is that your character doesn't necessarily equal your backstory, and vice versa. Trauma makes life, in almost every sense of the word. We are our past experiences, so it is very much, just like in real life, what you do with your trauma as with your character, what you do with your trauma in that sense. It's very important to come up with how you're going to play your character from the very beginning when you're doing character creation, because it just gets messy if you try to do it in the middle.
Yeah. And when you're creating your backstory, try and cover the events that stand out to you in your character's past. And if you don't know what those are, think of your favorite characters or characters similar to how your character is going to play in things that you've seen, like Lord of the Rings, any TV show, anything like that. Just extrapolate from the character's struggles and how they dealt with them and fit it into your character. It's not bad to be inspired by something. It's very good to be inspired by something, because that means you can draw on it and use it as a reference point and ground your character in more of a set fast thing than just a miasmic cloud that you might just have hovering in your mind, because sometimes it's very hard to actually come up with an original thing. I know that trouble very well.
Yeah. Some good advice I got about DMing is to think of a story, a book, or a TV show, or whatever, that you really like, that not many people have heard of, and then tweak it a little bit, and you have a D&D campaign.
Yes.
Can't imagine you told me that.
Can't what?
I said I can't imagine who told me that.
Was it me?
Veckin told me.
Oh, okay. I can't remember if I did or not. It sounds like something I might say.
Yes,
it
was you. You weren't even talking to me. You were talking to, I believe, I'm trying to remember his name.
Zephyr?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
No. It doesn't matter.
It does not matter.
Anyway.
Fuck it all. We're nihilists now. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. No, wait, sorry. Now we're Jared drunk.
It just doesn't matter.
No, now we're Jared drunk at the totem. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Oh God, that guy cracks me up.
All right, that needs to be edited out.
That means what?
All right. I think at that, I don't really have any much to add about character creation.
Yeah, it is kind of
some highlights.
Down.
Some highlights. Communicate. Jive with your party and your DM. Jive with the campaign. Note to DMs: do not be afraid to tell your players no. Just don't.
Please tell them no all the time. Makes it fun. Makes it fun.
Yes. They might get mad at you. They might throw a hissy fit. They might say, "Why not?" and argue the thing for 3 hours. But it's very simple to be like, "No, he will die,"
or "No, it's my world. This is how it works."
Or
the Great Blood Conversation of 2014.
There was a blood conversation
about how much blood a vampire can suck.
Oh yeah.
We come up with the stupidest things to talk about in D&D.
We had an argument about the ways and the ability of sucking blood that vampires had.
Yeah,
and we argued for about 2.5 hours about vampires.
And it came down to, I said, flock it, and cut the number in half and told them to shove the rest of their argument up their ass. Because I was tired of dealing with it, and we proceeded to continue on with the campaign. Because it was fun.
It was a good campaign.
Yes.
But anyway.
I hope to run another soon.
Comes down to communication and driving. DMs, tell your players no. You can probably do it nicer and be like, maybe that'll work in a different campaign.
Yeah.
But I don't see it working in this one. But tell them.
Or take their idea, put it on the back burner, and when a similar situation comes up, incorporate their idea kind of into the campaign, because they'll probably remember. Because players are very good at remembering stupid little things.
Indeed. Let me see. Really, in creation, decide who your character is going to be.
Yes.
Make sure it drives and really decide.
Don't be
for the love of God. And for the love of God, do your work. If you're gonna play a spellcaster, read your spells.
Yes.
Don't read them the day of. Don't read them when you think you're going to need them. Read the detailed spell descriptions months in advance, and then maybe reference them 2 days in advance. I don't know.
If you want a good idea, run through the spell list, pick out some key spells that you think you'll like, write down what they're called on a piece of note paper or something, and then read the spells that you think you're going to use most often and understand what they mean. You don't have to remember everything about them, but you have to be able to say, I'm going to use Hailstorm, or what is it, Storm of Sleet, and understand that reduces visibility and makes people move slow, and slip, and fall, and trip. And not that, I plan on using Flame Strike on one guy, but Flame Strike has a 40-foot radius. On one guy. The entire party will be hit by that spell. On one guy. And then the DM and the rest of the players sit there and yell at you, and you feel bad and sad and mad. And other words that rhyme with "ad." So.
Read your spells. That's what it comes down to.
Yes, please read your spells if you're a spellcaster. If you're not a spellcaster, you don't have to worry about that crap. When it's useful.
If you're not a spellcaster, read your spells anyway. Read other people's spells. That way you can
read spells. Yeah, if you don't care about magic at all, read your bloody feats. Read combat maneuvers.
Yeah.
Read something. Bookwork is key. Unless you plan on making your DM play your character for you, and all you do is decide whether you turn right or left to get into the taco line. Tacos. And
something else. For DMs, completely off topic. Something I have learned recently in my DMing experience, especially with new players, don't be afraid to tell your characters what they're doing. More advanced players might get a little upset, but new players will definitely appreciate it, because they don't know. They really don't know.
Yeah.
And if you leave it all up to them, they're going to get more sad than if you just oh, you mean you meant to go to the potion brewery or the alchemist to get your potions for half price? That's what I would have done. You're right. That's smart.
Indeed.
They'll really appreciate it, and they'll probably get a kick out of your joke. Go ahead.
We actually had a player who joined in for a for a new campaign that was started on Sunday, and she sat down, made her character, we played through, and we get to a town, and she gets into a shop and looks at the DM and stares at him. And he goes, "What are you doing?" And she just looks at him. She didn't know. She had no clue. She couldn't think about whether or not she wanted to buy something to eat. We actually ended up breaking it down to where her hometown was, and we said, what would you do if you walked into Fred Meyer's and looked into the deli and were just standing there? The guy goes, well, what would you like? And you just go, and she kind of got it, but she actually ended up dropping out of the campaign. She will not be playing anymore because she can't get it. It's too complex for her, apparently, which I don't get. But yeah. So we actually lost we had a lost player because she couldn't understand what was going on, and we didn't just tell her what her character was doing. So it's a sad story, but it happens. People leave. Not everyone can do D&D, apparently, much like EVE Online.
You make that crack because I refuse to play EVE Online.
Yeah. No, EVE Online is actually just a very hard game to get into. But we'll talk about EVE Online on another episode.
Podcast. So, anyway, I think
that's pretty much it. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, we got a lot talked about. Got a lot of good stuff in here. If you guys want to reach us, we have a Twitter. It's the IntoxPod, I think, is what we're under. Yeah. At Intox_pod, INTOX_pod. We'll have a Facebook, hopefully, in the next few days. And I'm planning on getting a email set up as well in the next couple. Oh, we do have an email. The email is the intoxicationalpodcast@gmail.com. This should be on iTunes, so go ahead and leave us a review and whatever you want to do there. And we'd love to hear back from you guys, all 7 of you who listen. And hope you guys have a good day or good night or whatever you guys came for. And for the Intoxicational Podcast, I've been Veckin.
Yeah. And I'm Oscar.